Hey, we are live. I am Justin, also known as the DIY Audio Guy right here on YouTube. And we are here for season 2, episode, is it 5 already, of the Sound Advice live stream and podcast. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, the one and only Nick from Toys DIY Audio. Hey, Nick, say hi.
Hi.
A man, a few words. How's everybody doing out in the chat? Nick, I feel like you're clipping just a little bit. Can y'all in the chat tell us how we sound real quick? Give us a quick sound check.
Hey, Sean.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully Lego is starting a home theater build and would like some recommendations for receivers on a budget. Middle of road audiophile price range, thinking 5.1. So we'll try to hit that one early on, since someone threw a question almost out there immediately. Nick, you're more the home theater guy than I am. You're more of a receiver guy than I am. What would you recommend for a middle of the road and an audiophile range receiver?
Well, here's the first thing I would say. They're almost all owned by the same company now. So, I mean, I hate to say it, like there's only like really 2 companies out there that make receivers. Everyone's getting bought out. And it's not saying that there aren't differences, because there are. But they're getting more blurred. Let's put it that way. So I would, instead of looking at that, I would ask myself the questions, what am I looking for out of a receiver? Okay, so 5.1 is fine. Are you looking for later getting Atmos or not? Are you looking later to add external amplifiers or have the ability to do that? How many HDMI inputs am I looking for? Those are the types of things that are going to start getting you to the right amplifier, because without those questions answered first, I can't recommend a middle of the line budget amplifier, because it would almost be like, well, what do you need? So for example, like for me, most of the time I always look for RCA outs, because if I can, just in case I want to use, other amplifiers in the future, I can do that. Now, I will mention one of the websites that you can go to is Accessories for Less. They sell a lot of refurbished receivers. Now, they're manufacturer refurbished by the manufacturers, and you can get them for a significant savings. So that's one of the great places to go buy one right now.
Kip has an opinion on this. Kip says Marantz is greater than Yamaha, is greater than Onkyo, is greater than Denon, which is interesting because I'm running a Denon. And the reason why I'm running a Denon is years ago when I moved into this house, it was time to upgrade, and I bought the Denon. It was a refurbished from Amazon, and it was cheap. And then every time I'd have a lightning strike, I would lose an HDMI channel. Like there would be a power surge at the house or something like that, and I'd have to power cycle the receiver, and it would have one less HDMI channel. And it finally got to the point where I didn't have enough channels, and I went and bought another one. And I just got the newest version of what I had because I wasn't in the mood to do a bunch of research on what to use. And I'm perfectly fine with the Denon, but Kip disagrees with me, so that's fine.
And I have Yamaha at the bottom of my list. So, everyone has their own personal opinions. And with me, Yamaha, unfortunately, is often a much brighter receiver. So depending, like, especially if you do horn speakers or things like that, the Yamaha can end up, being a little bit brighter than I like. Now you can, you can DSP like almost all of them now, but still, just in general.
The thing I like about the Denon is it does come with the calibration and setup mic, where it goes through that system where it plays the whoop sounds on all your speakers and sets it up for you. And so I like that. And that was nice to know that it, assuming that it works properly, it's almost like a kicker key, almost as good as that, right, Kip? I invited Kip to come join the show and pop into the chat today because I wanted to give him a shout out. You may notice that I am sporting some new kicker gear. So Kip hooked me up and sent me some kicker gear. He sent me several shirts and a beer cozy and a stool. So I'm looking forward to putting that together and using it to sit on at some point. And so, Kip, thank you for sending that out to me. I'll try to wear them in videos as much as I can. So thanks for popping into the chat and saying hello. And thanks to Kicker for supporting your creators. I was in a rush to get started today, and I left the beer cozy downstairs, but I had the beer, so it's okay.
There you go. Yeah, I would probably start off accessories first, but almost every receiver at budget friendly is going to have a setup microphone. Now, each setup microphone is going to be different. We'll mention that too. You'll notice some will say like Odyssey, some will say like Odyssey XT, and some will say XT32. Each one of those will actually do a little bit more than the other one, and so some of them will actually EQ your subwoofers, some will not. So those are the things I would look for first. Last thing I'd look for is the power output. Don't pay attention to that number.
Oh yeah, it's just lies, pure lies.
Yeah, don't ever buy a receiver off rated power output.
So Thomas Marshall put a comment up here. He says don't laugh, but his Logitech Z550 THX setup rocks. And I'm not going to laugh at that, because if it is THX, it means it's supposed to conform to a standard. So it should conform to the standard. Would you agree, Nick?
Well, that it conforms to it has to. So sure.
I mean, more feedback from Kip. Marantz bought Denon. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, Marantz. Well, that's why I say like they all pretty much own each other now. Marantz is my favorite. I'm with Kip though. I don't like Denon either. Denon is near the bottom. Like Denon and Yamaha are at the bottom for me. I would rather have the Onkyo, although Onkyo doesn't. They got bought out too now, so I don't know. I don't even think Onkyo makes receivers anymore.
I thought about going with a more entry-level Marantz, but I wanted to stick with 7.1 channels. Not that I use any more than 5.1, so I probably should have just gone for the Marantz.
Now Onkyo does make them again. Oh, that's good. This last year's been like so crazy with everything that's going on. Pioneer stopped making them too. I'll get it to you. I don't know. I'll get it to you. Justin will hook us up.
All right. Well, cool.
We in a kicker shirt. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, there's several good ones. So I'm looking for. I look like I work for Kicker now. So.
Oh, can you highlight Regular Guys Audio's Killed Energy, Athena, and many others?
I'm not familiar with Killed Energy, but I've heard of Athena.
No, well, it's not. Klipsch absorbed these other companies, or the people. Energy was one, and Athena was one of my favorite budget speakers of all time. They sounded so much better than what you paid for. Now, I'm not saying that they were, $1,000 speakers. They were like $130 for a pair of tower speakers that sounded like as good as like the top of the line Klipsch Synergy speakers. And they bought them out, and then they just trashed them. But I always liked Athena.
I'm always afraid I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Joaquin Juarez says, I wouldn't be surprised if Epsilon owns everybody in 5 years. Good Lord, I hope not. Oh, Lord, that would be the worst thing ever. Kip, please don't sell your company. Don't let the boss sell the company to Epsilon. Please, no. Quick shout out to Andy. I think we've got Andy scheduled to be on the show at some point, don't we?
Next week.
Next week. Awesome. That's going to be great. We have a longtime viewer, first-time commenter, Dale. Dale, are you a viewer of my channel or Nick's or both? In any case, we're glad to have you here in the chat. You've got a Harley Davidson with a 750-watt 8-inch sub driven by a 400-watt Kenwood that you can't feel or hear. Need marine and small mono. Got any recommendations?
Well, it's because it's being driven by a Kenwood.
My amps are all Kenwoods right now. I'm looking to upgrade them as soon as possible. I bought them because they were compact and they fit. I don't know. My thing with a Harley is I don't see how anyone gets any bass out of those things. You don't have large storage, spaces to put subwoofers. An 8-inch is only going to do so much. How do you even get a subwoofer in a motorcycle, right? I mean, because you've got the thing closed in a storage compartment, right?
Maybe it would be better just to a bass shaker.
Maybe you need to go with something that's waterproof.
Motorcycle is basically a bass shaker anyway, so I don't know that it can compete with that anyway. Because your bass is sitting on the engines.
I wonder, Kip, does Kicker have any suggestions for a subwoofer on a motorcycle? I've not tried to put a subwoofer on a motorcycle, so I don't have good advice. It's in the saddlebag.
Oh, wait, is it in an enclosure in the saddlebag or just sitting in the saddlebag?
More than likely, it's an enclosure that fits into the saddlebag, and then and so it's in the saddlebag itself. It's probably a hard bag, right? A hard case. is my guess.
I don't know. Could be.
Well, good thing that Mr. Irby has said no, because we don't need another company going to Epsilon. All right, Nick, here's a question for you. Yeah, okay. The saddlebag is the enclosure.
Yeah, see, like that's your first problem, I think.
Right.
There's no way that this...
Right, so you put the woofer in the saddlebag, and then you close the saddlebag. Sound can't get out, right?
Correct. Well, no, it's not just that. It's the saddlebag is. I guess we gotta. Is this a plastic saddlebag?
I'm guessing it's probably like a fiberglass.
Is it? Because there's leather, there's fiberglass.
A hard case. I'm guessing it's a hard case saddlebag. I don't know enough about Harleys to give you a good answer.
The bag's the enclosure. I have holes in the side. Uh-oh. Okay, never mind.
You're fine.
Yeah, I just realized what I was doing. The bag's the enclosure, and I have holes in the side. So the holes are acting as ports then?
I'm more of like the holes are what keeps the sound from being completely contained inside the saddlebag. Imagine you've got a trunk that's fully enclosed that's outside of your car.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, like, but anytime, like, if the subwoofer's in the saddlebag and you have holes in it, they're acting as ports either way. Because you're either creating some type of bandpass box, right? Like some type of, like, I don't know, fourth order or whatever, or you're creating a ported sub.
Yeah. I think regular audio has kind of hit the nail on the head here. It's like the same issue with the convertible, right? You've got the subwoofer in the trunk basically, and the trunk is sealed off by the convertible top. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I have not yet tackled the entire how to get a motorcycle to sound good.
Yeah, I would almost need to have pictures of what's going on because I can't for whatever reason. I can't visualize it for whatever reason. But I would say, I mean, your first issue is like anytime it's in a saddlebag, even if it's a hard case, the subwoofer itself needs to be facing outside. And if it's not facing outside, you've created a whole nother enclosure, right?
Right.
So that's my point. Is like the subwoofer.
I'm Googling Harley hard case saddlebag here.
So I'm not really sure, to be honest, without facing it outside. And then, like he said, he's going to need some type of weatherproof one, something like a something made out of like PVC. I don't know.
So Dale said he's going to send a pic. You can send that to DIYaudioguy@gmail.com, and I'd be glad to try to give you my thoughts on it. So that's, I don't know what else to tell you. How's the JP8 going? 25 Hertz to Life has asked. Right now, it's just acting as a prop for videos at the moment. I haven't hooked it up yet. I do have some plans to explore some things with it, and we'll see how that goes. So
someone asked about the Dayton Esoteric.
Yes.
I want to mention that real quick. Yeah, here you go. You need to vent out of the bag, or you're just not going to hear. Then that's kind of what I was getting at.
Right.
And once
everything below 50 hertz just disappears. Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. It's going to have to. So someone asked about the Dayton Esoteric. That was the ES180 Ti8, I think, and he asked what I thought of it. So first of all, it's one of the most beautiful drivers I've ever seen. It is just gorgeous looking. It has the face of it. It's that woven glass fiber. It's beautiful. I mean, honestly, I feel like if you're going to use it, you should put it like in like a fiberglass, some type of like clear enclosure where you can see it because it's just so amazing. Now, having said
invert the cone or something.
Well, no, because the cone is beautiful too. So you want it to be like a plexiglass case or something, like, So I think it's beautiful. Now, having said that, I think in that price range, there's probably better. I like it a lot. I've always liked it. I think I mentioned it on my channel when I reviewed it that I liked it. And the speaker I designed with one of the Esoterics, I really, really liked. Having said that, I don't know. I feel like there's probably better in the 7-inch price range still. Although it does get low. It does not have as much X-Max though. It's only 5.3 millimeters X-Max. So, you know.
All right, here's a question. Opinions on the Kicker CVR12 dual Voice coil. And when will you make a box for this sub? As far as now, this is one of those things I get a little bit confused by Kicker's model numbers. I don't think they make a CVR anymore. I think that stands for Comp VR. Kip, you can correct me on this. I don't have any experience with the actual CVR myself. I've got a Comp R, and some people call that a cheap entry level sub, and I love it. I think it sounds great. I'm real happy with it, and it's on sale right now. Sonic Electronics website has them nice and cheap. So, Kip, if you have any advice to give on Comp CVRs, feel free to share it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to also mention the other one that he talked about was the Dayton Audio RS270-P. I've never used that one. I've used Dayton Audio. I've used some of their paper audio with their reference series. They're always very, very good sounding. And that's the thing with the Dayton Esoteric as well. It sounds really good. This for $110 for 10-inch woofer sounds really good. Once again, you're going to be limited on excursion. So, that's going to be your main limiting factor when you use something like that.
Awesome. All right. I've got a list of questions, and I want to make sure I hit a couple of these. I feel like I'm dominating the conversation, but I'm going to go ahead. And so I've put out some videos about port tuning. Just put a video out that kind of explained the physics of what's going on with a port. There's your answer about the Comp VR or CVR is the older version of the Comp R. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. I've had a lot of questions about the relationship between the tuning frequency of a ported enclosure and the resonant frequency of a subwoofer, the FS and the FB. And a lot of people are asking me, can I tune a subwoofer below the subwoofer's FS, the resonant frequency? Nick, can I tune a subwoofer lower than its resonant frequency?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think people put too much emphasis on that resonant frequency. And my experience with, playing around with WinISD and building a few enclosures, you can tune it as low as you want.
Well, of course you can.
How it will sound when it gets tuned far too low is an issue, of course.
I think, though, when most people ask that question too, though, they're asking, can you tune it flat? Past the FS. At least that's the way I hear it, at least in home theater. That's what a lot of people ask. And the answer is still yes, absolutely. I mean, it all depends on the TS specs. You got to put them in and figure out what's going on and go there. But you're right. You can do an extended bass shelf. You can do, a -6 decibel extended bass shelf. You can just tune it to whatever frequency you want and not care as well. I mean,
And I think it's too easy for someone to pull up the TS parameters when they haven't really worked with TS parameters before and look at those numbers and say, oh, look, there's the resonant frequency. It's 40 hertz. This woofer can only play 40 hertz. Well, no, you can tune it to 30 and it might have an F3 of 28 if you did that. So that resonant frequency is not really a way to know for sure how low it can go or where it would sound good at as far as tuning it goes. Mathematically, the resonant frequency is a function of the weight of the soft parts, the cone, the coil, the things that move, and the softness or the compliance of the suspension. And so when the soft parts get heavier, the resonant frequency actually goes down. So sometimes all it's really telling you is you've got a heavy cone.
Yeah, and it just stands for the free air resonance. So here, I'm gonna share my screen because I'm gonna show you a good example.
Excellent.
Because this was all right. So this is the Tangband W5 1138 SMF. Anyone that knows, this is what I consider my favorite real small subwoofer. Now, it's not the best. It's noisier than some of the other ones. It has distortion and everything, but it's a 5.25 inch subwoofer that can get really low, and that's just very rare. So, it's pretty cool. But its resonant frequency is 45 hertz. And yet I tune this thing 35 hertz all day long, F3 between 35 and 32 hertz, depending on what I'm doing with it. No issues there with tuning that low. And that's tuning it flat. That's not tuning it, with a big bump or anything. That's tuning it flat. Anechoically.
Right. The true voice of reason says FB, FP, F3, all the important things to know. And the way I like to think about it, the FS, I think you meant to type, the resonant frequency is the woofer by itself. FB, the tuning frequency of the box, is the box by itself. And F3 tells you how low you can actually go. So that F3 points where you're down 3 decibels, this means you're down to half the musical power. And so basically anything lower than the F3, you're just not going to get that much output. You'll get some, right? It'll be there. But after you throw on an infrasonic filter, there's just not much going to be happening below the F3. And the F3 is what you get when you combine the woofer and the box.
So I'm going to just clarify that because you're right.
Yes, clarify.
Anechoically, you're right. But once you put it in a room, that's not necessarily the case.
Yes. I mean, we all
get room gain.
Well, I think with the cabin gain in a car, right? I mean, if you've ever tried to look at that, I mean, well, the cabin gain in the car is probably why car audio got big in the first place. You basically turn the interior of a car into part of a bandpass enclosure, and it's awesome.
Oh, highlight Living Loud with Andy's comment, if you wouldn't mind.
If I can find it. This one right here?
Yeah, I'll never forget my conversation with Jeremy Brown. Well, the FS is 26 hertz, so I figured it'd play nice and low. Jeremy, well, the Solo X wasn't technically designed in the mind of 17 hertz. And that's true. I mean, there's times where the FS will be like 26 hertz and stuff, and it will tune higher than that. Like its F3 will end up being like 35 hertz. Once again, tuned Chevy Chev, right?
Yeah. Is that what that means? Is that what Getsom's comment means?
Flat. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't reading his comment. What do you say? Most new car audio subs have a high FS than Ford using too.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of those 6.5s and 8s are going to have a very high FS because the FS is not just the weight of the cone, it's the weight of the cone relative to how soft the suspension is. And, 8s and 6.5s are cool, but they just can't do what 10s and 12s and 15s can do.
And here's the deal. I think the most important thing to take away this, if you're worried about FS, don't worry about FS in terms of tuning. Some drivers are going to tune above FS. Some drivers are going to tune below FS. It's going to be dependent on your design, and it's going to be dependent on the rest of the TS parameters of the subwoofer.
Right.
Driver.
They're all tied together. One TS parameter doesn't define how a subwoofer will perform.
Yeah, and I feel
Thomas Marshall.
Real quick, I feel like the other thing that people get confused about too is VAS. Like they'll look at VAS and they'll think that's what size their box is supposed to be, and that also is not what that means.
Right. The VAS actually is a way of expressing how stiff the suspension is. The VAS is saying that the suspension has the same stiffness as this amount of air would have if you tried to compress that air.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most common questions I get asked a lot is, well, if the VAS is only 1.5 cubic feet, why did you make your box 3 cubic feet?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The VAS is related to the CMS mathematically. So the VAS and the FS will be tied to each other mathematically. Those things will auto calculate off each other in WinISD. Regular guy audio is enjoying the conversation. I'm glad you are. Nick, what have you got? What have you got? Questions from your channel, from your forums? Y'all are hanging out on the forums, right? Nick's got some awesome forums. In fact, Andy is the chief boss of the car audio forums on Toys DIY audio website. So
yes, and actually, Will, for those that don't know, today's the last day to get on that site. But if you get on the site, you write anything down in the car audio section, you'll be entered to win. I do have a prize set in mind. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is right now. But on the 6th, we will announce that when Andy's on here, and I will also announce who won and also get in contact with you. So Yeah, so let's go ahead and share. Let me share this. This is a driver I've been asked a lot about. So I thought maybe we could talk about it. This is actually one that I did a whole video on the website. I did not do a video on my channel on it. Now, having said that, it's the only, you just have to go look at it on the website. Like, you don't have to, you know, I actually got closed out of it, so now I have to find it. But if you go to the website, you can see that we actually I did a little video on it with WinISD. And people have been asking about this new GRS subwoofer because it looks to be like this really crazy value for $60. Let me share my screen.
GRS, that's the same GRS as that killer 12 and 10 that we like so much. The great replacement speakers.
Great replacement. Yes, but this one is the high excursion version. This is like a brand new one that came out. If you check out the website,
double stacked magnet. Ooh.
Yes, it's a double stack magnet. It is a stamped steel frame, which makes sense because it's $60. It's on back order right now until January. Some of the things I don't like about it, I'll mention right off the bat. The tinsel leads, if you see, they're not connected to the spider in any way, shape, or form. So you might get those flapping against the cone or something when it's really moving. But here's the deal. Like, this thing does a really good job. Like, this models really well. And this models well in anything from a 2.5 cubic foot to 4 cubic foot box.
It's a paper cone?
It's a paper cone. Yep,
okay.
It's a paper cone. I mean, it's going to be using, most of your less expensive quality parts, right? Like, so it's paper cone, stamped steel. Most of the stuff on here is very, very basic. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but it only takes a 250 watt amplifier. So you're good there. If you get like the SPA 250, that has a lot better dynamic power.
The SPA 250 is on sale right now. Hit my blog and get you one of their coupons and go buy an SPA 250.
Yeah, and this is like $60. It's actually not a bad little unit, and it'll get you to the mid 20s for $60. And that's good. And you don't have to really worry about your cone excursion there. And I mean, I've never heard it, but I think at the $60 price range for how low it goes for home theater, I think it would be hard pressed to. I mean, I think it's good value. Let's put it that way.
Nick, I'd like to hear your opinion of this. This is Regular Guy Audio's response to Eric earlier. Eric is Eric's Variety Channel. First time catching the show. Thanks for catching the show. Do you think cars will reach a point where it's impossible to upgrade any part of the audio system?
Probably.
Yes.
Some of them kind of are.
If you've ever been in a Tesla, you know that there's no what other than gutting the entire radio and doing a lot of very complicated integration stuff. I don't think you can put a radio in a Tesla. I hope that's not the truth. Hey, what's the X-Max on that subwoofer, Nick?
Oh, it's crazy. And that's the thing too. Like, at full power, you're not hitting excursion. That's the thing that I like about this. Now, you do have a little bit of issue, and I'll mention this right off the bat. You're going to have a little bit of an issue with your rear port air velocity. But if you use like one of those, which we've talked about many times, those precision ports that are flared on both ends, I think you'll be fine. And the areas where you have it are between like 25 and 15 hertz. So once again, how often are you going there anyway? And then, when you do, can you make up for it? So let's see. The excursion is 12.5 millimeters, which is really good for a 12-inch inexpensive subwoofer.
So I'm looking at that, and what I've noticed is that the Dayton Audio Classic Series 12 that I've used in my home theater has gradually gotten more expensive. It's got about 12.5 millimeters of X-Max, a very similar looking driver. I'm wondering if maybe what they've done is they're using this GRS is now going to be their low end driver. As opposed to their really cheap driver, it's going to be their low end kind of entry driver.
Talk about this is their high end of GRS.
This high end GRS is going to be replacing what used to be their cheapest Dayton. A lot of people keep saying that Kip's show is rigged. I don't know why.
I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and link where we talked about that subwoofer in the forum. If you guys want, there's a video there that you guys can watch too, where I kind of go over the WinISD aspects of it.
Nick, you got any questions from your channel you want to ask?
Well, I just went over that one.
All right. Good with that one. I got one that I think is interesting. I'm going to share my screen here if I can figure out how to do that. Where's the share screen button at? There it is. I keep getting people who jump into my my channel, and they keep asking me over and over again, I don't know why, what's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns? And I can't for the life of me figure out what it is that they're talking about. I mean, I don't see a resemblance. Do y'all see a resemblance?
Only in the teeth.
What's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns? Don't you think they're funny?
Dude, speaking of clowns, have you ever seen that 80s movie? I think it's 80s, maybe early 90s. Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I've never even seen these movies that this guy's based on. I'm not a horror movie fan, but every now and then I do get someone pop into my comments and say that I look a little bit like him. So, but it's all right. That was fun. Have you got another good question to talk about?
Well, one other question that people have brought up a lot to me. I'll mention this again. Once again, it's about a subwoofer that's new. I feel like a lot of people ask me about a lot of subwoofers that are new, and I understand that. Like, you want to get your best bang for the buck, right? Like, and I get that. Why wouldn't you? So that's the new Dayton HE, and this one looks really well made.
That's the high excursion, right?
That's the new
got
high
that
excursion
big triple stacked magnet. I'll get it in the stream in a second, just as soon as I become competent at using StreamYard. Whoop, where'd it go?
It disappeared. I got it for you. Here you go. There it is. It's just loading. So here it is. Here's the new high excursion. It's kind of cool because it does have 2+2 ohm, right? So you can either make it 4 or 1 ohm. I love the bindings. Like, you can definitely tell, like, this is a higher, a much better quality subwoofer, right? We got everything is nice on this. I love the binding posts too. Just everything is well made. Triple stack motor. The thing is massive. A lot of people want to use this for home theater, and there's nothing wrong with this. I actually did a full WinISD video on this for my patrons. So that's not going to be one that, unfortunately, that you can see. Here's the deal with this one, though. I am not a fan of this for home audio, as is, without some type of passive radiator. And at this price, I'm almost like, I feel like it's almost priced itself out of the market, at least in home theater wise with this. I think this would make a much better car audio that don't care as much about sound quality. Just very hard to get that. Unless you want to lose power, which you could do that. You could give it less power, right? Unless you just want to give it less power, you have a lot of issues with rear port air velocity when you tune it low, and either rear port air velocity or first port resonance, depending on how you do it. And so for me, I would rather go, like, at this price range, especially if I'm going home theater, I would do a Dayton Ultimax, or I would do the MX-15. Like, those would be, if I'm sticking with Dayton, I should say.
We were talking about this before the stream, talking about the asinine port you need to make this thing work, especially in a home theater. And Nick, you mentioned going with the passive radiator. Well, the rule for a passive radiator is you got to be able to move twice the volume of air. So you need one radiator with double the X max, or two with the same X max. Holy crap, what kind of passive radiator do you need for this thing? You're going to need 4 of the damn things.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's designed in a way that it should sound really good, right? I mean, as far as, the parts that go into it, the way it's made, the way it's designed, it probably doesn't have much distortion at all. But I don't know that I want to buy that and then also spend however much it's going to cost for the passive radiators to get it to where it's going to be. And then not only that, passive radiators, once again, aren't going to tune it as well as, the port. And I mean, most of the tuning out there for like a decent sized box is like 27, mid 20s. anyway, which
What's
I don't
the
know.
recommended RMS of this one, Nick? If you don't mind me interrupting
800.
you.
I think it's
800?
800 and 1600. Yeah. So
Okay.
I would rather go with you could go with the MX-15, which is cheaper than that. You get a 15-inch bigger box, but you don't have any of those issues. And it's the same power rating.
You know, at that price, there's so many great subs that could probably hold. I mean, that's a lot of power, but there's so many great subs at that price. I'm not sure what a 12-inch kicker Q class costs, because I was telling Kip, hey, send me some stuff. I'll talk up kicker. And so I'm doing it, Kip, like I said I would. So I got a question for you, Nick, that popped up in the chat, and I would love to know your thoughts on this. Should there be more women in car audio?
Yeah.
My feelings on it are that this is a hobby that should be for everybody. There shouldn't be anyone who shouldn't be interested in either car or home audio, because anyone who loves music should be into audio.
Yeah, more kids as well. I mean,
yeah. I know that, if you read psychology, you might know more about this than Nick than I do, is that men have a tendency to be more interested in things and women more interested in people. So the trick to getting more women into car audio is to be more relational.
Or to have more interesting people.
Or to have more interesting people.
Hello, start having all your wives listen to this. Hello, more interesting people.
Here's something that I find funny. I've tried to convince my wife over the years to upgrade radios in her vehicle. Oh no, I'm not into that stuff. It's not cool. I don't really like it. But anytime I go on a road trip with her in my truck, by the time we get where we're going, my ears are bleeding. I said this in the last live stream, right? My ears are bleeding because she gets in the truck and she cranks it up, and she's not into the bass heavy stuff, but she loves the music and she jams. And I put an Alpine radio in her car so she could have Android Auto. And when I go on a road trip in her car, now my ears are bleeding when I get out. And it's just because she loves music and she'll crank it up. And it's just like, I've been telling you for years. And she's like, yeah, I guess you were right.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is honestly, part of it is there's a bad stigma around it, right? Car audio, home audio, etc. And the reason why is everyone is happy with their system, but a lot of people, unfortunately, that we know of also have really bad systems. Let's just call it the way it is. And and so you buy these cheap Sony Explode speakers, they throw them in there, or they buy the cheapest Klipsch brand speakers, throw it up there, throw it up so high that all we hear is distortion. And it turns everyone off. You're like, I don't even like listening to that stuff.
Hey, thanks, Robert Clark. 2 earthquakes, right? Nice. I got the, if you've watched my channel, I've got that inexpensive box that Sonic Electronics sent out to me with their kind of entry-level subwoofers. And my comment on the review of that was, if you've got $250 to spend and you need some bass, sure, it works just fine. Does it sound good? No. The amp is interesting, though. I've been tinkering with the amp, and I'm going to probably do a video on the amp. The amp has some kind of limiter on it. It won't clip. I cannot get it to clip.
I would like to highlight Jim D's answer there, because I think he's right. And I would say that on any of the components. But people should spend more money on a quality sub instead of cheaping out. Quality subs last. My Kicker L7 is going strong for 13 plus years. I know a friend that used to use Kicker L7s in competitions. They lasted him forever as well. And that was in competition. I mean,
I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Subdyno Man. Women love music in clubs and concerts. Absolutely. Right. Everyone loves music. Music's for everybody. So car audio should be for everybody.
I will tell you this too. So I recently started getting into headphone stuff, and I don't know, but now that I have kids, it's like, it's kind of nice to have headphones on occasionally. But before, I got like this awesome DAC, and these are all by SMSL, this DAC and this headphone amplifier, and hooked them up with your XLR connectors. I mean, it like opened up my ears to a whole nother, I don't know, because I'm so used to cheap headphones, right? I'm like, oh yeah, who cares? They're headphones, whatever. But then when you start really listening to high quality stuff, it really does start putting you on the level where you start being able to feel the music. Yeah. And not just feel it in your head and on your body, but also emotionally. And there's something about that with real good speakers. Movies and music get transferred to a whole nother level with good recordings.
All right. I'm going to try to, I just checked my messages. I haven't checked them for a while. I just got a message from Kip, and he said that he would have time to actually join us on the stream. And so would you mind, Nick? I'm going to see if I can figure out how to send him a link and add him and see if he wants to pop in and chat with us a little bit as well. If you want to have Kip jump in for a surprise experience, a surprise guest. Kip, if you're still up for it, just join if I can figure out how to get you a link. And if not, then
just copy it from Facebook.
I found it. I found it. Just got to go into Facebook now. So hang on. So Nick, what else do you have? What are some other questions that you get on your channel?
Well, I Thomas Marshall agrees with me, and that's the most important thing because I love Thomas Marshall. So is China leading the way in speaker manufacturing? I'm assuming you mean actual driver components. And I think the answer to that is yes, but they're also leading the world in like almost every manufacturing. So I don't know that that's really anything new there.
So Kip, you can talk about what you've built for your home when you jump in. If you want to pop into the link there that I just sent you, feel free to comment on that more. And 25 Hertz to Life has a great question. Favorite Miami bass CD? I don't know that I know exactly what is and is not Miami bass, but I think one of my favorite bass CDs out there is, well, first of all, anything Techmaster PEB, anything Bass Mechanic.
Yes, Bass Mechanic. There it is.
Yeah, and the Techmaster PEB, it came from Outer Bass. The opening track on that is this really low frequency assault on your eardrums that is stunning if you have something that'll play the lows. It's like a 20 hertz note. And when I had my Dayton Ultimax with the passive radiator installed in the truck, that thing just really, man, the way it just shook everything was just so much fun. Nemesis, I miss Nemesis. I wish there was more Nemesis out there. Munchies for your bass.
Yeah, I used to always like Darude as well, which it wasn't necessarily around bass in general, but just I always enjoyed that. But I think that's kind of the problem too, is like bass heavy music can sometimes give a bad, like when you hear bass heavy music in a car that was not designed for bass heavy music, all you hear is the trunk and the doors going. Rawr. That's a turnoff for a lot of people. I can't say for everyone, but for a lot of people, especially a lot of women, I could say.
Yes, I think so. That definitely is. And my feelings on the matter are that if you're going to do this, in addition to, avoiding the really cheap bottom of the line speakers, go ahead and set aside money for some Dynamat or equivalent material, and a little bit on the trunk goes a long way. One of those kits on the license plate, and they sell just license plate kits. I mean, if your license plate's rattling, please put some sound deadener on your license plate. Or
just remove it. Cops don't care. Don't do that. That's terrible advice. I am not liable for that statement.
So I've got one for you right here that I would love to know your thoughts on it, Nick. So someone popped in and asked this question. Let's see if I can find it. Doug Tond, one of my viewers, asked this question. Is there any straightforward method for determining the angle of drivers in a sound quality setup, primarily tweeters? And so that's the first thing, right?
So in a car, right?
Well, the thing is that the principles are the same, car or home, right? Because the issue is beaming.
Well, it can be. I mean, some of it depends on what you're trying to accomplish too, right? Like, are you trying to? Because, for example, we've talked about this on the show with Hi-Fi Vega. Are we talking about for one seat or multi-seat? Right.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying we're talking about a car, not home audio, right?
And Kip has popped in. Thanks for popping in, Kip.
How y'all doing tonight?
Good. Kip, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. One of my viewers asked the question, is there any straightforward method for determining the angle of drivers in a sound quality setup, primarily tweeters?
Well, that's a loaded question. I'm going to give you a loaded answer for that because, before you can talk about aiming a tweeter or worried about aiming a tweeter, you need to look at what's its response on axis and off axis, because knowing those two properties on a tweeter are going to tell you, do you need it aimed directly at your ear? Are you going to get a better sound if it's not aimed directly at your ear? And then you have to also take into account all the materials that are around the tweeter where it's mounted. Hard glass, hard plastic, leather, whatever it may be. You've got all sorts of reflections and refractions that are going on there. So my first answer is most people just want to aim the tweeter at their ear. But you have to also understand that that doesn't necessarily always sound the best.
Yeah, and what I was just talking about too with him is we also have to decide, like, who are we aiming for the best sound for? Is it just for the driver, or is it a multi-seat position as well? Because that's going to also make a difference, right?
Absolutely. Back in the day, before sorry, I keep hitting pop-ups on my phone here. I apologize. Glad I'm off duty and I don't have to be professional tonight. The thing is, back in the original days of competition, everything was basically set up as a one-seat tuned car. And I know there are some guys that will talk about how they set up a car for two-seat. And there were some radically altered cars back in the late 80s, early 90s where, they'd move the seat rails back and in. So basically both seats were in the center of the equilateral triangle. So you get, really good sound in both seats. But honestly, most cars were single-seat cars. You fast forward to today, there are a lot of cars, even OEM cars from the factory, that sound pretty good in both seats, but a lot of it has to do with up mixing and a lot of it has to do with phasing, where they're doing, an all-pass filter and changing the phase on a select group of frequencies to try to get that imaging or staging for both people in the car. And of course, center consoles in a car just destroy mid-bass and your imaging and staging. That's why a lot of the problems come in a car. But, it depends. So if you go back into, I was blessed to spend a lot of time, and I did learn a lot of myself by working with Mark Eldridge and Gary Biggs. With anybody in here who knows anything about those two guys, they're some of the legends of car audio sound quality competition. And, sometimes those guys would shoot for aiming the tweeters right in the center of the car, hoping that the off-axis response to the tweeter was a better response, or they were trying to get around reflections or things that are where the tweeter was mounted. But Gary and Mark spent a lot of time altering their cars. They made the cars work as an audio system. It wasn't just putting a pair of tweeters on an A-pillar or down on your door sail pillar or something like that. So it really, you got to decide what your goal is, and understanding that 9 times out of 10, there's only one person driving the car that needs to be happy, and that's the driver.
So the answer to the question is no, there's not an easy, simple formula.
No.
All right. So Jason Stokes just put this up in the chat a second ago. Would the enclosure need to be a little bigger using subs designed for car audio? So I'm assuming you're talking about a car audio subwoofer moved into a home theater setting. My answer to that is that in a home theater setting, you tend to tune lower, and you probably need to make the box a little bit bigger, and you have the room. Nick, Kip, what are your thoughts?
I'd agree to that completely. I don't want to try to draw a line in the sand between a home sub and a car sub. There are differences. It's not that you can't use either one in the other environment, but most car audio subwoofers today tend to be a lot heavier mass. They're designed to have a lot more power to drive them. They're designed to get low in a smaller box. And then when you go to the opposite side of the equation, most home subwoofers truly are tuned a little higher. They're not tuned as low as they are in a car situation. Now, I can say from my own personal experience, and I joked about it, I've built home subwoofers for years. When I say years, I probably wouldn't be exaggerating if I said 25 or 30 years that I've played and tinkered and built my own home subs, not just car, but home as well. And I've used lots of drivers from the Parts Express catalog. I know you guys are fans of them. I've been using Parts Express for a long time. And as a matter of fact, currently sitting here in the little living area here, I have a Parts Express 15-inch. And it's not the Ultimax. It's the one before they moved to the Ultimax naming convention. So I think Titanic Mark III might be it.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yep, Titanic Mark III, yep.
So I've got a Titanic Mark III in about a 4.5 cubic foot box, sealed, with plenty of power on. I've got about 1,500 watts driving it. And it's people want to put me in a corner sometimes and say ported versus sealed. And all I can say is I'm not going to choose one or the other. I'm going to say it's application specific and what you're trying to get out of the system. I've heard some home ported subwoofers that I absolutely love. I've heard some home ported subwoofers I hate. And I say the same thing about sealed enclosures. I tend to find myself being more of a sealed enclosure guy, but being a sealed enclosure guy means you got to have the right subwoofer and you got to have plenty of power to make it do what you want it to do before you reach the excursion of the driver. And so like the driver I'm using here right now, I got plenty of power. I actually have, if you were to look at the equalization I've got on it, I actually have a rising response that probably starts at about 45 cycles all the way down to 20, and it rolls up on the EQ. And what that simply means is when I do that much equalization, I got to turn the gain down. But then at moderate listening levels, when I'm sitting here watching a movie or anything on TV, when things blow up, I want to feel that they blow up, and they do. Now, I can overdrive the driver very easily if I don't watch it, but that's not the fault of the driver or the enclosure they power. That's the end user. In other words, me, the idiot behind the volume knob. Just know what you're doing.
Well, and you also have EQ'd it, correct? That's what you're saying.
Yes, I have EQ'd a lot of EQ. I mean, ironically, we joke about it at work, and Steve Irby says, in a closed loop system, which is what's great. Like if you look at some of the closed loop products that Kickers come out with over the years, like the Bullfrogs, the Amphitheaters, which are the Bluetooth portable products. Steve Irby loves doing closed loop products because you have total control over how it sounds. If you want a 4-inch driver to play down to 30 hertz, you can make a 4-inch driver play down to 30 hertz, no problem at all. Just don't ask it to float babies at 30 hertz. It's a 4-inch driver.
Yeah.
But Steve Irby loves those closed loop systems because you can tune and tweak them with the DSP to get them to sound any way you want them to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Someone also had mentioned shoe research, and he said, he had a 12-inch that went flat to like 18 hertz, and it's probably true. I do believe same thing with what Kip is saying. Shoe research inside, if you look at the back of their amplifier, they actually have switches on the back where if you have one port open or one port closed, both open or both closed, and you actually flip the amplifier over. And although I don't know for certain, I'm 90% sure that has something to do with the DSP built in to activate that depending on what you're doing with it.
Absolutely. You're changing either, there's probably some kind of a shelf EQ, a low extended frequency boost going on, and you're changing either the knee or the gain with those switches would be my guess.
Yeah.
All right. Someone had asked a question a little bit earlier. I had it up for a second. Advice for picking out a mid-bass driver. And so, Nick, in a home setting, what do you look for when you're picking out that 6.5 plus or minus driver to go into a 2 or a 3-way system?
Well, unfortunately, there's some things that I would look for that aren't going to be on manufacturer's spec sheets typically, because I want to look for low distortion, right? And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get that typically from those. Sometimes you're going to have to order those in and actually test them to get that. So most of the time, I'm looking for linearity, and box size is typically not going to be an issue, because if you're going mid-bass, you're going to use a sealed box, and it's going to end up being very minute size typically, no matter what. So I'm not usually concerned about box size. I'm more concerned with linearity and crossover point as far as beaming in the regions that I'm trying to hit. So if I'm trying to go from like 500 hertz to 2000 hertz, for example, then I might choose a smaller driver depending on, what the off axis is. And that's going to be all dependent on size anyway.
In a car, I tend to want to go for the biggest mid-bass that will fit in the factory location without hitting the window and everything else that might hit. But I know that there are some rules that actually should be followed that deal with some of the TS specs. So, Kip, as far as TS specs, what TS specs should you be looking for if you want to put a speaker in a car door?
Here's the thing. When you go to a car door, the thing that everybody realizes, unless you spend the time to actually make an enclosure, you're in a free air or infinite baffle environment. That's just the bottom line to it right there. And I wish I could talk about something that's...
No.
I can't talk about it right now.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
It wouldn't be you getting me in trouble. It'd be me getting me in trouble. But
I don't want you to get in trouble.
The thing about it is, so for example, let's say you're designing a driver and mid-range is your focus. I mean, if you want this driver to be very acoustically flat up to say 5 to 6 to 7 K. And so you're trying to design a mid-range that will naturally roll into a tweeter and sound really good and natural up there and not have that honky mid-range sound because it's got that peak boost between 2 and 5K that a lot of those drivers have. You need a cone that's really light, really responsive, and typically a stiff suspension. Now, what that's going to mean, though, is it's not going to have a low FS. It's not going to be a mid-bass driver. Now, from a design standpoint, if you were to loosen the suspension up or add mass to the cone, you could get the driver to have a lower FS and get it to have that 60 hertz snap, that 60 to 80 hertz snap that most people associate with a mid-bass driver. But typically when you do that, if you start trying to loosen the suspension or add weight to get there, adding weight, you lose efficiency. Loosen up the suspension, you lose linearity at the upper frequencies. So I guess the thing I would say is understand, and I work for Kicker, and I've worked directly for Kicker for almost 26 years. There's no perfect speaker. We jokingly say all the time, the perfect speaker would be a single cone that covers every frequency from 20 to 20, perfectly linear, and there is no such thing. There's no such environment. There's no such an enclosure. So when it comes to what you're trying to do, you really need to focus on what are your goals. For me, if I'm just going to put a 6.5 or a 7 or an 8-inch driver or a 6x9, because 6x9 has become the 8-inch driver of the 2020s. I mean, every car out there is using 6x9s in the front doors, which I don't think is bad at all. A 6x9 is a great driver. It gives you lots of cone area, and it gives you lots of great mid bass. Just understand that it's always a compromise. If you're looking for a speaker that's going to be quote unquote sonically accurate or flat way up high, it's typically not going to play really low. It's not going to get into that snappy region that most people consider mid bass. So then what it comes down to is, where's your priorities? If you can get your subwoofer to fill that gap, if you can cross your subwoofer over a little higher so that you're making up for that lack of mid bass in your mid-range driver, it can be okay. I'm speaking from personal experience here. We just did some listening demos last week, is why I wish I could talk about something, but I can't. But it really depends on your goals. If I was looking for a general, overall good mid-bass speaker to put in my car door, I'd want something that plays relatively flat up to probably 3 to 4K, while at the same time, it would be snappy down to that 60 hertz region, because that's where I like a speaker to play in through that range. Now, if I was looking for strictly a mid-range driver, and that's why I did all that preface, it kind of changes the rules, because if you want a sonically accurate and flat mid-range driver that goes out really high, it's not going to play deep.
Yeah, that's a good point too. What are you looking for? I got a question for you, Kip. And you may not have an answer for this. I really don't know, because I know that you mainly do car audio, and this is mainly in the home audio scene. And it's really, I can't say new, but it's relatively new in the essence that the patent has been, more people can make them now.
Okay.
But there's a thing called a compression coaxial. Are you familiar with that?
When you say compression coaxial, are you talking about with a horn-loaded driver in the center of the cone?
Yeah. So no, actually, I'm not. But that's a
Okay.
good. You're talking about like Eminence has some like that where you can like screw in the compression driver to the center of a cone, the mid range. A compression coaxial is kind of new. Like I can't say new, but because it's not. But BMS has made them for a long, long time, and now BNC and a few other people aren't. But it looks just like a normal compression driver that you'd either screw in TPI, but typically these are 2 or 4 bolt systems.
Okay.
And it actually has, just one hole there, but inside that, it has both the tweeter and the mid-range built into it. So they're supposed to be pretty much perfectly time aligned, and it's interesting. They're very expensive. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on it, but if you're not real familiar with it, I guess you may not have.
I don't know that I'm real familiar with exactly what you're talking about. There's something I want to talk about. What it sounds like to me is you're talking about basically a horn loaded version of what we would call point source coax. And basically with horn loading, the whole benefit to horn loading, and a lot of people may or may not know out there, you got your driver and you got your lens, and the lens is what most people, they call the whole thing a horn, but you got your lens, that's the throat, or the throat, and then the expanding throat that comes out front, that's your lens, you got your driver. The lens is an impedance matching transformer. And if anyone's familiar with the old term balun, if you're ever familiar with like going from 75 ohm coax to 300 ohm flat wire, you have those little round things that it's got the F connector on one end and the split wires on the other. That's an impedance matching transformer. That's an electronic or electrical matching version. A lens on a compression loaded horn driver does the same thing, and that it takes the rapid movement at the back of the throat, and it comes out and it transfers that energy, and instead of being rapid motion, it turns it into slower motion, but it's over a much larger radiating surface area. And so the lens is what gives you the efficiency. It couples the energy coming from the diaphragm into the air at a much larger surface area. So what you're describing to me, I mean, I love point source coaxials. Our QS coaxials are a point source type driver where you're trying to get the tweeter and the mid-range basically time aligned right at the coil source. So I can't say that I've played with one, but what you're describing to me sounds like a point source coax with a lens on it.
Yeah. So if you're, hey, can you throw that screen real quick, Sir Justin?
Yes.
All right. So this is the compression coaxial from BNC. Well, this is one of them. They have a bunch of different ones. BNC also, but you're right.
It's only $711. Let's buy 2 or 3 of them.
They have some. They have some that are cheaper, but yeah, this is the first one I just grabbed or whatever. But yeah, and that's exactly like they both come out of that diaphragm. JTR, if you're familiar with them as home theater speakers, they use the compression coaxial, but they use BMS's version. That's all. Oh yeah, I guess I'll show. That's pretty interesting. So I was just curious. So that's cool to hear that you like the idea of the basic principle of it, I should say.
The basic principle is sound. It's all about, I mean, if you do a point source coax, and that's why what you're describing to me, that's what it sounded like, was a point source coax with a lens on it. And so the lens simply gives you your efficiency. It's your impedance matching transformer from the diaphragm to the air, whereas a point source coax doesn't have that. You know, I think horn-loaded compression drivers get a bad rap. I have heard some excellent sounding systems, whether it's in home or car or pro sound or nightclubs. I was blessed in my younger years to do a light commercial sound. And so I've heard some fantastic systems with horn-loaded compression drivers. I've also heard some horrible ones. The thing about it is those systems I've heard that sound really good, they either used really good lenses so that it controlled the diffraction and things that happen with that. Eclipse, unfortunately, has patented the name on it. It's actually called a my brain just Tractrix. And so a Tractrix horn, Eclipse patented the name, although I don't know how they can do that, because everybody, you look up any manual, you look up any science about it, they all call them Tractrix horns. So, but Eclipse patented the name, so we can't use the name. We use that design in our horn-loaded compression marine cans. And I can tell you, I've had the opportunity to listen to our horn-loaded cans up against every other. There's not a brand you couldn't say that I can't tell you I've heard compared to ours at Kicker. And the smoothness and the natural sound of our driver just blows me away every time. But here's the thing. We give up just a little bit of output, and it's just that little bit output in that range right in there.
Yeah. And
by giving that up and by mechanically EQing the lens to not do that, we may not be, and we're talking, a half a dB, 3/4 of a dB. We're not even talking anything that matters. But by giving up a little bit of that nasally output that does measure and register as SPL, it might be louder, it sounds significantly better. And so I think horn-loaded drivers get a bad reputation because I think a lot of people have heard them. I've heard a lot of these vehicles that they're out at the SPL shows, and I can't get away from them fast enough. They sound horrible. It's not that they're loud, it's that they're horrible and loud.
Yeah, I like that description. So why don't we see more of that type of driver in car audio?
Horn-loaded drivers?
Well, just in general, I would say higher efficiency drivers.
It all boils down, in my honest opinion, is the lens. If you want to get a lens that'll do that type of work for you, and you're looking at the mounting depth typically in a car, you can't get a decent lens in there. There's no depth.
Yeah, well, but I mean, even for like a mid, I can't say mid-bass, mid-range, like a higher efficiency, like mid-range or higher efficiency. It seems like most of the time, most of the efficiency is down low, and it seems like it's more pointed towards like what we were talking about earlier, is more that lower mid-bass.
So you mean as far as more of a PA style type speaker for car, higher efficiency for that?
Well, for like people that care a lot about sound quality systems, for example, because it would seem to me that you would need less power, which should mean an amplifier, and in most cases will have less distortion. And so hopefully the driver also has less distortion because you're giving it less power. So it would seem to me that there should be some benefits there.
If you go back into the Wayback Machine, which I'm accused of being in, which is fine, if you go Gary Biggs, Mark Eldra, Alma Gates, Rob Rice, the whole host of guys who were extreme sound quality. I mean, back in the day when SPL wasn't the thing that make you or break you at a show, it was installation quality, it it was sound quality, and then SPL was just part of your score. SPL wasn't your whole score. So when you go back into those days when guys were focused on SQ, I heard lots of cars in that day with compression loaded horns. It sounded fantastic, but those guys spent a lot of work because basically the horns were under the dash. And when you looked at the throat size and the throat depth, I mean, we're looking at throats that were 22 to 28 inches wide. They were 3 to 5 inches tall. And then the overall depth from the front of the lens to where the driver was could be 18 to 24 inches. You're not mounting those in a typical car without a lot of custom work, which these guys did. They did tons of custom work to get those drivers in there. And you're right. When you have a driver that's that efficient, you're not even running your amplifiers up into 3 to 5 watts, and you're getting tons of sound out of them. I mean, you probably weren't even running them that high when they were doing SQ. When they were doing SQ judging, they probably running half a watt to a watt and a half.
Oh wow. Yeah, I always just wondered about that. So I'm like, but that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
I'm going to cut in real quick and say thank you to Tron Magnum for the super chat. Super chats are always appreciated. We definitely put that to good use building our channels. Several questions have popped up that I want to just, since Kip, we've got you for a few minutes,
Sure.
and I want to be mindful of your time. It's after,
No,
it's
you're
after
fine.
we usually go for about an hour, but we'll go as long as everybody's having a good time, and I'm having a blast. So we'll just keep going. Somebody asked a question about crossover point for the CS tweeter. And Thomas Marshall also asked a question about compression horns and silk dome tweeters, a good combo in a car audio system. I think y'all just answered that. Personally, I'm biased towards the good old-fashioned silk dome tweeter, and I don't think I could ever make a compression horn sound good. But people have done it, and when it's right, it's right. When it's wrong, it's absolutely horrible.
And I think that's the real issue is with compression loaded horns. I think the vast majority of us have been exposed to ones that have been done wrong. And so it's just a stereotypical response. You think about a horn loaded driver, you're me, those don't sound good. I'll admit I was guilty of that way back in the day because most of them I listened to were just, I mean, I'm growing a beard, so it doesn't really apply, but you could shave with a lot of those horn loaded compression drivers. Just tear in your face and just pick the beard hairs out because they're so harsh.
And Kip, do you happen to know off the top of your head the recommended crossover point for your CS tweeters?
It depends on the slope. So if you're doing your own thing, it depends on the crossover slope, but those are typically crossed over at 12 or 18 dB per octave at 3.5.
Okay. So the resonant frequency
kilohertz.
is probably about half of that then.
More than likely, yes. I'd have to, if he's talking CS, I'm sure he's talking CS components. So those come with it's either, and I can't remember, I could be wrong, but it's either 12 or it's 18 dB per octave. And that's the thing that's crazy is, we don't get fixated on a crossover slope has to be a certain slope all the time. When we're designing a set of speakers, I can tell you right now we're going through some new product I can't talk about that's coming out. And, we went back and forth between an 18, a 12, and a 6 dB per octave crossover based upon the tweeter. And depending on where you pick the crossover point, we got different sound characteristics out of it. And this one speaker we were designing, even though it was going to be the oddball in the bunch as far as technology, we ended up doing just a 6 dB crossover on it, which is ironic because people want to look at, well, it's just got a cap, it must be cheap or low end. No, it's designing a speaker to sound how you want is an art. You got to spend a lot of time looking at the graphs, listening with your ears, and figuring things out. And just in this particular speaker, the other two models are going to be 12 dB per octave crossovers, but this one is going to be 6 just because the resonance of the tweeter, the resonance of the mid-range, where they came together, the 6 dB on the tweeter sounded better. So instead of crossing it over at, say, 3K at 12 dB, we went up to almost 6K and crossed it over at 6 dB. And it just sounded fantastic.
Yeah, I remember. And that's true. Even in home audio, people look down on a first order crossover a lot of times. They say, it needs to be second or third order. And I remember one of the cheapest speakers I designed was called the Reveals. And I think it was, I don't know, 30 or 60 bucks to build a pair. And it was a first order. And people rave about it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" But some people look at that and they say it's first order. It can't sound good. And it's like, well, no, that's not true.
If you want some education, just go get yourself some speakers at a yard sale. It doesn't matter what they are. Just go get some yard sale speakers and open them up and take a look. I did that back when I started my channel with the attempt to film it, but the camera was horrible filming. I never did actually make a video on it, but it was a set of speakers that someone had bought at a mall store, like a JCPenney or something back in the early 80s. cones completely shredded, long gone decades ago, probably. I cracked that thing open and it had a little bitty capacitor on the tweeter and a little bitty capacitor on the mid-range just to keep those things from distorting and blowing. But someone went to a JC Penney in the 80s and listened to that and spent their money on it and probably loved it for a decade or two.
You're right.
And, you know, I'm looking at it going, wow, they got ripped off. But if they bought it and loved it for a decade or two and were happy with it, so what?
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
ideally in speaker design, and this is something, you know, I knew what I knew. I didn't know what I didn't know. And what I still don't know is much bigger pool, but I learn about that stuff every day. And working with engineers and Mr. Irby at work is really great. But, you know, ideally, if you could design a mid-range driver to roll up and roll off naturally and don't need any crossover on it at all. So you're just taking your 4, your 5, your 6, your 8, and it's just running straight power into it. And then you bring your tweeter in and you can design your tweeter to roll in with just a 6 dB per octave passive capacitor. It's actually going to be some of the better sounding systems you've ever heard.
That's actually what I did with the Dynas. The Dynas use a super tweeter and a full range driver, which we all know full range aren't really full range.
Right.
But you know, and I did the same thing. There's no crossover point from the mid range into the tweeter, just from the tweeter to the mid range, and it's a 6 decibel. And people love that sound.
It sounds really good. And, you know, if you could run a tweeter without a crossover and design a speaker, you might try to get away with it. But I don't know of any tweeter that works well without a crossover.
What are you talking about? What about the what am I thinking of, Justin? I can't think of the name now.
Piezo
Electric.
Yeah. There you go.
Piezo,
Yeah.
Piezo is how it's pronounced.
They all sound amazing, right?
It's like that's a tomato kind of thing. I've heard them called Piezos. I've heard them called Piezios. So, you know, take your pick. Either one's correct in my book. We make a product called the KB6000, which uses a 6.5 inch mid range and a piezo of 4x6 piezo horn, 2x4 piezo horn. And we actually put a resistor in there. As I know this sounds strange, but with a piezo, a resistor acts like a crossover and a capacitor acts like a current limiter, so that actually you can reduce output volume on it, which is totally the opposite. When you think of a tweeter, it's piezos just work them. They're voltage, not frequency dependent, so they're just different animal.
Interesting.
And I'm not a fan of piezos per se, so I'm not a good judge of character when it comes to that. But there are so many people that love how that little KB6000 speaker sounds, and it's just a 6.5 inch driver, no crossover components. Steve worked with the guys to get that thing to sound how they wanted with nothing on it, so there is no low pass on it. And then they just roll in that piezo. You could run that piezo full range. You can plug right into it and you wouldn't need a crossover on it. But Steve, to get the sonic character that he wanted out of that, it does have a coil and a cap on it. And it's to shape that response on it just a little bit. To me, it makes it a little less harsh. But yeah, you could run piezos full range.
Yeah,
you're right about that.
And I'm being jestful here a little because most people don't like. We call them piezos, but piezo, whatever, tweeters.
Yeah,
I can't say most people. I should say me and Justin don't really care for them that much typically.
I'm in the same boat. I'm not a huge fan. Ironically, the best sounding one that I've ever heard is by Motorola.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Motorola, and all the ones I've heard over the years, I think Motorola made probably the best sounding one that I ever heard was from Motorola.
All I can think of is oil for whatever reason. I can't even imagine. All right. Wet
Decent
socks.
Ribbons or RAAL? I have no idea what an RAAL is.
It's raw. They're a very high-end ribbon company.
Okay.
Speaking of ribbons, I mean, I don't know how far you guys go back in car audio, but do either of you remember the Carver amazing loudspeaker?
No,
I do not. But I'm assuming they're by Bob Carver.
Yes, that is. And this goes back into this would have been early mid 80s for me at a shop I worked at, and we sold Bob Carver, and he made a speaker called the Amazing Loudspeaker, and the speaker was probably every bit of 6 foot tall. It had a single subwoofer from the bottoms. I remember, I think it was a 10, and then it was a ribbon tweeter that went from the floor all the way up.
Oh, wow.
And they were inefficient as all get out. They took a ton of power, but you need a ton of power. I think they had a sensitivity is probably like 83, 82. I mean, they were just inefficient hogs. but it was an interesting speaker because of that ribbon. And I don't know that I won't say I like ribbons, and I won't say I don't like ribbons. Ribbons are just different.
I like ribbons, and yeah, I've heard some like the raw and stuff, but it's the same thing. It's a different. You're one of those people. I feel like a ribbon is one of those speakers you have to listen to and decide whether you like or not. And even different ribbons can even sound different, but still, in general,
Yes.
you really almost need to listen to them beforehand.
I've got some air motion transformers in my truck, and they're crossed over really, really high because I've got middlers in the dash that take care of most of the mid range, and I kind of like them. They're an interesting, different, just a little different kind of sound. So I would recommend trying those if you want to try some. All right, what kind of subs do you have in your cars? So guys, Nick, do you got a sub in your car at the moment? And if so, what is it?
Of course, I have a sub in my car. What kind of silly question is that? I have what came factory from Lincoln. Just an 8-inch connector. You know what, man? I have 2 kids I drive around in my car with, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I really care about their hearing, so I'm not going to put a crazy, ridiculous sub in my car right now. Now, if I had on the go-kart, maybe I'll put one on the go-kart. Me and Andy both have our little go-karts. Maybe we'll stick some subs on that and some outdoor speakers, and that'd be kind of cool. But no, I that's all I have.
Kip, what are you running in your car?
Well, right now it's pure stock.
Okay.
Me and Kip are on the same page here today.
Okay, so this is going to be funny. Y'all going to get right now. I have no subwoofer in my truck at the moment. What ended up happening was I was swapping subwoofers in and out for testing, just for videos, right? Just for the videos. And then I had my back surgery at a time when the sub was out, and subs are heavy. And I haven't, I slid that cheap Belva one in for that one with help from family members, and that came out pretty quick. It didn't stay in long.
The car I'm currently driving, it is, matter of fact, it's so stock. It's how the plumber's house leaks and the electrician's house has a light that never turns on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm accused of that at work with my car. Now, the car I had before this, I had gear in it all the time. It was actually a test vehicle, so I would have something in the car for about 2 weeks. Pull it out, throw something else in for 2 weeks because it was constantly testing gear. When I got rid of that vehicle and got the current vehicle I have now, I just haven't had the time to go through and do anything to it. Although Karma, is an interesting thing. And my front left door speaker is blown. So now I'm ready to do an upgrade. But what I'm waiting on is I want an L7X10 for my vehicle.
That would be nice. Well, see, and here's the deal. Like, I would, if I didn't have children, I always ran a system in my car before I had children. But then I'm like, I don't know if I really want that in my car right now. When they get older, I'm sure I will go back to it most likely. But I'm going to go more for sound quality when I do it. I'm not going to be into the SPL anymore.
All right.
Joaquin Juarez says, I better make time or there'll be consequences.
Someone asked I got a funny story for y'all. Okay. Okay. So before I started pulling things in, out and experimenting with, I had an underseat enclosure, a prefab enclosure with a pair of Polk Audio 10s that I got. I bought them like they were closeouts from Crutchfield, and they were $40 each. And they were great woofers. I still got them. They're still down in the garage collecting dust. Threw those things in there on Alpine amplifier. I'm sorry, it's not kicker gear, Kip, but it
you don't have to apologize for that ever.
And so it was. I had my kids in the car, and they had some friends who were going somewhere. I forget where. It may have been a kid's birthday party. Kids were doing sleepovers and stuff. And I had 3 kids in the back of the truck with extended cab truck sitting in the back, and I turned the bass up just a little bit. And one of the kids yelled out, "Oh, wow, it feels like I'm getting a butt massage." And I thought, oh, God, please don't go home and tell your mama that you got a butt massage in the back of my truck. I'm going to get in so much trouble. No, please don't tell your mama that.
You talk about having a system in your car, and I saw a few comments over there. If anyone ever gets a chance, we've had him on the show and talked with him, Mr. John Myers. We call him Dr. 12 Volt. John and I came to work for Kicker at the same time, and John has a Ford Mustang GT, which has an over-the-top installation done in that car. I know some people have seen it at a few of the shows, but John has it is a show quality type installation in his car. I've just, sometimes I just been busy, between work and my wife and I have been building a house. I just don't have time to work on my own stuff. So it's priorities. As soon as I get the house done, I can work on then I can move in the garage and I can work on some.
So real quick, Justin, someone asked, 25 Hertz to Life told me to put the Dayton 15-inch, which is the MX-15, in my car. First of all, no, that's in my home theater. I love it in my home theater. That's staying there.
It wouldn't fit in your car.
It probably wouldn't. Well, yeah, it would, because I have an SUV.
5 cubic foot box. It's not going to fit in the back of that Lincoln.
I think it's 4 cubic foot. It might be 5. I don't remember. But you know what? I'm going to build a second one because you can never have enough space. And that's the thing. Like, if you said, Nick, what speakers do you have in your home theater? That would change every week. So, we gotta ask, the right question for me. I love car audio, but right now I'm okay with stock for this car. Now, if I ever buy a fixer-upper car, something that's real easy to do that stuff to, then. But the higher end stuff, like your Lincolns, any of your newer cars, man, it's just gets more convoluted. You got to buy all this other stuff for it, and
you say that, and I got it. I'm an audio guy. Obviously, I've been in audio forever, and I appreciate a great sounding system. I don't care if it's in home, car, bar, nightclub. I mean, I'm that guy that you go out with me to a nightclub or a bar. If I'm there 5 minutes and the audio system sounds horrible, I'm like, let's finish the drink, guys, and go to the next place. Like, what? Oh, this place. I'm like, nah, this place sounds horrible. I have to have good sounding audio, or I don't want to be around it. It just drives me crazy.
I agree.
And the thing that, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't believe that I'm some golden eared audiophile, but when it sounds wrong, you just know it, and it's like, no, we just can't.
I appreciate getting in front of a set of speakers and closing your eyes and having that experience where you can actually see with your ears the stage and the imaging and the height and the placement of everything. I appreciate that. It's not that I don't, but I will take good tonal frequency response over everything else every day of the week. Because if you can't sit there and just enjoy the music, if it's not harsh, it's not raspy, if it's not covering the full bandwidth, if it's not EQ'd out properly, whether mechanically, the enclosure, electronics, call it whatever you want, all together. But if it doesn't sound good, and by sound good, I just mean I can sit there and I can talk to people and I can enjoy it, and the music sounds right. The bass is tight, it hits when it needs to be deep, it is. The mid-range is present and full, but not overbearing. The tweeters, sound like a good soft dome, but aren't tearing my head off. When the music sounds good, you can spend hours listening to it and the people you're around and enjoying the conversation and everything. But when the system sounds bad, I get listener's fatigue. And it's not that I'm trying to be it's not like I'm sitting at the bar going, oh, it doesn't image your stage. No, I'm sitting at the bar going, this sounds horrible. I got to go. Yeah, I know. But the thing about it.
Kidding.
No, he's right. I mean, I completely agree with that. And I'll even say, I'll say one of the reasons why I actually bought my car. Well, I can't say one of the, but one it did actually play into the part was it was actually designed by THX and George Lucas. They all went in there and they did a bunch of stuff. And you know what? I gotta say, for a stock system, it sounds good. I'm not gonna say great. It sounds good though. I'm all right with that. But I also knew that some of the other systems, it was going to be very hard to upgrade. And I'm also one of the people, though, when I get in my car, I listen more to not music, podcasts and
talk
things.
Radio.
Yeah.
News.
Yeah. Not so much news, but yeah, those types of things. Yeah. Where I get more the intellectual versus the emotional.
I know they're not podcasts. I find myself in my car a lot listening to YouTube, and I'll just fire up a video. I mean, I've listened to both of your channels in the car driving, doing stuff. I'm not watching. I just use it to listen because I think it's interesting to listen to all that. But, we talk about stock cars, getting harder and harder. I know Andy talked about a little bit ago as far as integration and things. I got to say this. The time I got to spend driving a Tesla S Plaid, which, first off, the performance of that car is insane. I don't even know how to describe how a car goes 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds and doesn't put a smile on your face, because it certainly does. But I don't know who they hired to design the audio system that goes in that Tesla S Plaid. It's pretty darn good. And when I say it's pretty darn good, I mean it's pretty darn good across the entire bandwidth. It gets loud, it's clean, it's accurate, it's got bass, it's deep and tight. If I had a Tesla S Plaid, probably the only thing I would even look at doing to it would be maybe adding a single subwoofer just to get a little more oomph in that, 25 to 45 hertz range that the stock system doesn't have. But I got to tell you, that Tesla S Plaid, it even gets it down there. I was shocked at how good that stock audio system sounded. Shocked.
Well, so this guy actually, Tron brought this up. Did Bazooka Tubes used to be better in the 90s? I heard one last week, and it wasn't like for. I got to say, I didn't realize Kicker still made Bazooka Tubes, because I brought that up on your channel, Kicker Unmasked, the other day. And you guys still make some, don't you? Like
we never. Bazooka Tubes, the actual trademark Bazooka Tubes was made by SAS, had nothing to do with Kicker at all.
Yeah, but they're just Sono tubes, aren't they?
It's a round enclosure with a half round port. And the cool thing about bazookas and what they got away with is they were fairly compact because the port ran along the entire exterior of the tube. So they got really low tuning without being a really huge box. It was really a cool concept. So I mean, I've had lots of people put me in their cars and say, "Oh man, I got a set of Kickers. You got to hear these. Come look in my car." And I'll go out and listen. And then when the demo's all said and done, it's JL gear, or it's Rockford gear, or it's Bazooka Tubes. I mean, I've heard everything, and people tell me, "Oh, you're the Kicker guy." Yeah, I got Kickers in my car. Come take a listen. They sound great. And so that's the power of, being a name that means just high performance, subwoofers is what Kicker was known for. So I've heard lots of Kicker systems in my day that aren't Kicker, but I'm respectful of all of them.
Now, do you guys still make tubes? Do you make a Sono tube or no?
You make a tube?
We make two tubes. We call a TB8 and a TB10. And what it is we've taken the concept where it's a Comp R driver with a Comp R passive radiator on the other end. So it is a tube product. You can mount it like a tube, but it's not ported. It's passive radiator. And both of those products, like the 10 is tuned at like 31 hertz. The 8's tuned at like 33 or 34. It's a little higher because it's an 8. But both those products it's a fine example of those products were made and they sound fantastic. They're not going to float babies. If you're just looking to put in some good, accurate bass into any car, yeah, that TB8 and that TB10, in particular, the high-end version of that is the QB8, which that's a extruded aluminum enclosure with a Q-Class 8 and a Q-Class passive radiator on it. So we do our own version of those, but I just want to make sure that no one misunderstands. We have nothing to do with Bazooka Tubes or the company SAS.
So the Bazooka Tube, the thing that I remember about them, one, they bragged in their advertising that they only went down to 39 hertz. That's the first thing. I remember that vividly. And at the time I thought that was impressive, but I know better now. And they would sell an amplified version that could be the master, and then a secondary one you can plug into it. And so you could basically, run them at 2 ohms off of one of them. They're really designed, behind the seat of a truck, try to get into a tight spot. They came with tie downs built into them so you could easily tie them down so they wouldn't roll around in your car, which they would because they're round.
I probably have a box somewhere with a bunch of those tie downs still in a box because I'm a pack rat.
And in my opinion of them is that when I was 16, I thought they were pretty badass, but looking back, I never heard one ever. I don't recall ever hearing one. And now looking at the specs now, it's like, yeah, that's actually kind of a lame speaker. I don't think they ever were that great. I think when I was 16 and I heard bass for the first time, everything impressed me. And now I'm not as impressed.
Maybe I'm just being, ignorant, but I feel like low tuning though is more of the past 15-year type thing, like especially in home theater, like 20 hertz and below, like that wasn't really a thing really back then. I don't feel like,
the thing I think that really drove the need or desire to have lower frequency, I think it all started when the CD player hit the scene. And I think when the CD player hit, because actually I look back at my career path and I think the CD player was the evolutionary product that just changed audio for everyone. Whether you want to get into the nostalgic, I love the sound of a record, or it's warmer, or, just put all that aside. The CD and the advent of it was the first time that the average consumer could get as close to a digital master anywhere they wanted, portable, in their car, in their home. And then, of course, that opens a whole can of worms today about, bit rate and bit depth and things like that today. But the fact is, I think CD, when it hit, it opened up that door where people actually started to either see the limitations in the products they had in their car and were open to having that discussion for something more, because they're like, okay, there's stuff here that I'm not fully experiencing. And I think that really drove the revolution. I really do believe that.
So what is your thoughts then on everything kind of going digital? Like, I mean, almost everything in the car now is either going to be hooked up with Android Auto, right? Or Bluetooth 5.0.
Bluetooth sucks.
Sure.
There's a joke at work. I tell people come up to me and they'll say, hey, ask Kip what he likes about Bluetooth. And I look at him and go, absolutely nothing. Maybe it's the purist in me, but the bottom line is I've done those tests. When people tell me that MP3 is just as good, and I'm here to say, no, I've done the test. It's not just pie in the sky. I can hear the difference between a track that's fully uncompressed and one that's done at 320, 256, 192, or 128. The differences are there. So for me, going digital, CD was already digital. The fact of the matter is, CD was, and when I use the word compression, and we got to be careful because there's so many different types of compression we could talk about in the audio path, but CD was the first digital compression that we as consumers got exposed to, and it was acceptable. It basically did 20 to 20. It was acceptable. We could hear it, and people loved it. Now, once we got to the CD player, I'm buying CDs back in the 80s, and in my mind, I'm thinking, the next evolution step is no spinning disc. It's just going to be on a card, like an Atari cartridge. You plug it in, and it just plays your music with no moving parts. Well, we've gotten there. There you go. We've gotten there. But what happened is, if you look at the audio, there you go. If you look at the audio chain, and you'll go back as far as you want, every time they came out with a new medium for the consumers, it got better audio in your hands until MP3. And when we got to MP3 and that type of compression, it was the first time that audio quality took a step backwards, because people wanted to be able to, really what drove it was Napster and all the things back in the day when there weren't high-speed internet connections, and people just wanted to share music.
Yeah,
however,
there was a couple
that's what drove it.
And the other thing also was storage capacity was expensive back then too.
Yes.
Right. And so now, though, storage capacity is cheaper. I have one terabyte internet. I mean, everyone has like ridiculous internet now, right? Like you can get all kinds of fast internet out there. And I said that wrong, but it doesn't matter. So you can get whatever.
I knew you meant gigabit.
I know. And I'm like, I just said terabyte. And I'm like,
I call them magic internet numbers.
Maybe no one caught that. And I'm like, I can't believe I just said that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So we have all this internet. And now Elon Musk has his new Starlink that's supposed to, like, whenever that goes real live, that's supposed to be even faster than what I have now, whenever it, 10 years down the road or whenever that happens. So now the question is, now we have all this stuff, but we're still kind of in that MP3 realm, though. And why is that? I
keep hoping. I'll be as far as the musical source, I still buy compact discs. As a matter of fact, I should have got it to show you. I just got my signed autograph version of the latest Techmaster PEB.
Oh yeah,
I just got
that deal.
So I have the original one. I still own the original Techmaster PEB. When he came out and he was going to do this, this remastered and new tracks, I had to have it. So I plopped down my $40, got an autographed copy, and I'm tickled to death to have it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip that into my computer as lossless. I do a lossless FLAC or ALEC, either one. And then I play it back. I have an Onkyo DAP1, which is my media player. So I use a media player. I have no problem with digital music, but I still, to this day, buy music that I like on CD. I rip it as a lossless format, and then I carry it around with me in my own drive, because it does matter. Now, the streaming, I do subscribe to Amazon Music HD, and there's not anyone that if you're listening to that and you go from a standard stream to an HD stream. Now, is it CD? I haven't done an analysis, but it sure sounds better than the MP3.
But here's the deal. I think what we've done is settled from quality for convenience, because it's the same way with movies, right? Like movies, if you listen, so Blu-ray, a lot of people don't know this, but Blu-ray and 4K UHD disc, whatever, they will use completely lossless audio. Okay, so no compression at all. Now, a lot of people are under the impression that Dolby Digital is the same thing as what you get on a Blu-ray, which is like Dolby True HD or DTS Master HD. It's not. Dolby Digital is compressed. Those are not. So when you're like designing speakers and things like that, you want to listen to those uncompressed versions as well. You don't want to listen to that. But unfortunately, like now everyone wants to go to streaming, and streaming is always compressed audio.
You know, you talk about streaming
video
being
for that matter.
compressed. If it's a movie that I'm going to enjoy, even if I'm just going to watch it once, I will go out and buy it on a Blu-ray 4K. And I will come home and I will watch it on Blu-ray 4K. I have actually done side by side on the same TV at home, and I've looked at the streaming version and HD 4K and coming off of the Blu-ray disc. And two things are glaringly apparent, and you don't have to be an audiophile, videophile to see these things. Number one, the streaming version has tons of banding in the color. It's not as bright. The dynamic range isn't there, no matter what they say. So HDR doesn't look as good unless you're coming off a Blu-ray 4K. And on the audio, they can tell you all day long that it's Atmos and it's this and it's that, whatever, coming on the stream. It's all compressed. You don't get the same. Yes.
Because it's considered Dolby Digital Plus Atmos, which is compressed. And it can transfer, I believe Dolby Digital Plus Atmos can actually transfer over fiber optics. So you know it's compressed.
Correct. So the thing about it is it's scary in my mind, but we've reached a point where a lot of people are just it's good enough. And what that does for people like me or Justin or Nick is that we're not happy with just good enough. We're doing this because we want to experience better than good enough. We want to experience up to the point that we can tell there are diminishing returns. When I reach that point, then there's no point in spending any more money or any more time because I've reached the nirvana. But the good enough drives what's available to people like you and I. And so it's really pretty scary. And that, for compact disc, anymore, it's Amazon. If I want a disc, I just go to Amazon, order it, and ship it to the house because I can't go to Best Buy and buy them anymore. And even Walmart doesn't carry really what they used to. And if I want a movie, fortunately, Best Buy still carries them. But anymore, if it's a movie I like, I just get in line and pre-order it and have it shipped to the house and have it on 4K because there is a difference. Now, is there enough difference for you to appreciate it or not? That's a personal call.
Well, I think there is if you have a good enough system. I think part of that is limitations of your system. Now, I'll tell you this too. You're going to find this funny. Where I live out in the middle of nowhere. Where I live, we still have a video store. I can go rent.
Is it a Blockbuster?
No, it's not a Blockbuster. I don't live.
There's actually I'm sure they're not owned by Blockbuster, but there's still a couple Blockbusters running in the U.S.
No, this is like the same. They actually had this big old deal because they've been open every day since like 1986 or something. And then this Thanksgiving, they decided to close for a day, and it was like this big deal. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, they're closed!"
It's great.
What are we gonna do without the video store?
So when it comes to MP3, that type of compression for audio, I am a non-plus guy. I'm not into it at all. Now, the other thing is there is compression that's used when you're mixing or mastering or capturing a live recording and things like that. And if you don't use compression there properly, it will sound horrible. So compression is not a bad thing. It's what type of compression are we talking about? And when it comes to taking an audio source and then running it through an algorithm and throwing a bunch of the data away because we've determined that it's masked and you're not going to hear it anyway, or that the upper harmonics, the masking, you're not going to tell that there's upper frequencies there that actually affect the lower frequencies. If you just want to believe all that, then MP3 is for you if you want to have quantity. But I'm here to tell you, MP3 is horrible, and MP3 over Bluetooth is even worse.
So now comes the other question. Then what do you think about all the new head units? Because most of them are not coming with CD players anymore.
I think CDs are dead, unfortunately, except for the few dinosaurs like us who want to search them out and find them. I'm fine if CDs are dead if they will just simply offer me a way to download direct 24.96 masters. I'll pay the same price, or I'll even pay a little bit more money. Let me download 24.96 masters, and that's where I want to go. I'm good with carrying all my music on a portable device. I'm good with streaming it, and what I'm hoping is that as data becomes faster and the price for data gets cheaper, is we see more of a push, whether it's from places like Tidal or Amazon HD or things like that, where they are actually, or QBiz, I think it is, Cobiz,
yeah.
There's several services that are offering either CD quality or better than CD quality downloads. And I think as data gets cheaper and the people are less attached to wanting to own the cover art and throw it on a shelf and say, I own it, I'm hoping that we'll have higher quality music to stream, because there is a big convenience factor to that.
Well, because we now have the bandwidth. You should. With AC internet and everything else now with your wireless internet, you should have the bandwidth now to be able to do that. So I don't see the issue as well.
Apple.
Okay, sorry. I will say I did try that Amazon Music out this past week. I had never tried that with the HD. And there is a huge difference between like that and even just Pandora or something.
Yes, there is. And so that's what I subscribe to. I use, if I'm going to stream something or I don't know, if it's nothing I own on disc, I'll stream it off Amazon HD. And then if it's something I really like, I buy the disc.
My problem with new head units is that they only have one aux input. What do you think about that, Justin?
I mean, I can't remember the last time that I actually plugged into the auxiliary input of my head unit. It's been a while, and I use Bluetooth a lot because of the convenience, especially if I am streaming a podcast or something. And Kip's his eyes just rolled out of his head. It's like, how dare you? I mean, it's convenient. It's convenient.
It is.
It is convenient.
It's way convenient.
I don't know the answer to this because like Android Auto will transfer via USB. You can actually do wireless in some videos, but a lot of them do via USB. Is there any, and I've never really paid attention because I already told you guys I don't listen to a lot of music in my car. Is there any type of quality benefit by doing that over streaming Bluetooth?
If it will pull the files directly off the USB into the head unit and the head unit will use its DAC to convert them, absolutely. It just depends.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense.
I'll say this. Dean's popped in and said wireless CarPlay for the win. I installed an Alpine radio in my wife's car. I mentioned that before. It has wired CarPlay and Android Auto. That thing is picky. It has to have a pristine USB cable in order to operate properly. And I am just about fed up with that Alpine ILX W650. I'm ready to rip the damn thing out and throw it away. I could not recommend anyone use one of those head units. I'm very unhappy with it. And I'm about to go out and buy a wireless one because she's commuting back and forth. And I'm getting tired of her not being able to use her phone safely.
Before you do that, I believe it's a Toto that makes one. I could be wrong, but Toto. A Toto and not Toto. A Toto. I believe they make a unit that actually will take your wired and turn it into wireless. You might want to take a look into that. It's only
Toto. Is that the one who wrote the song about Africa? I bless the rains down in copyright strike.
It's the same exact person. Yep, same exact one. It's ATOTO, I believe. I believe it's them that make it. I could be wrong. So don't quote me on the exact person, but
when I do that, I'm not going to really throw it away. I'm going to put it in my truck because I think my old Alpine CD receiver, the old trusty, is beginning to wear out. It stopped playing CDs the other day, so that's.
Well, if you do like it though, you could take a look and just see if that would be something that you want.
So, Justin, how do you play your music? Obviously, you hold up your phone, so you must stream most everything you do.
I do a lot of streaming. I've got a couple of CDs that I keep in the truck that I put in when I want to show off the stereo or just enjoy some music. Money for nothing, that kind of thing. That's just it's there. So if I just want to let me stick in something and crank it really loud and just sit in the parking lot and close my eyes and curse my job kind of thing. Everyone does that, I'm sure. But I do stream a lot and I do like a lot of bass heavy stuff, but I also love a lot of classic rock. And so it's just, to me, it's just fun to just get in and just turn it up to a moderate listening level and turn the bass up just a little bit more and play something and just enjoy it. And swap it out. You never know what I'm going to be playing. I might be dropping Tech Master today and then Metallica the next day. And then there's country music on right after that. So
Justin, I'm just going to take a guess. Just listen to what we're talking about. I'm going to bet that if you were to listen to what someone would call a sound quality system, so it was tuned for sound quality, you would listen to it and go, man, this sounds great if it only had 6 to 9 dB more bass. Because that's me.
Probably so.
That's me.
I don't think of myself as a bass head, but I think I might be one.
Everyone loves that drive, that hit. And the thing is, what they call a sound quality curve. I like everything that they do for a sound quality car except below 100 hertz because to me, it's too lean. And all those cars, if I go in and just raise the level of the subwoofer 6 to 9 dB, I'm a happy camper.
I tell you what, here's a good one for you. Go play this on your MP3 Bluetooth, Kip. Get some Bullet with Butterfly Wings by Smashing Pumpkins.
Bullet? with Butterfly Wings.
By
Okay.
Smashing Pumpkins.
I don't know that one, but I'm going to check it out. No, I do not, but I'm going to
when
tonight.
I first started losing my hair, I thought I would try to look like Billy Corrigan. That was the plan. So that was before I had any facial hair to go with the bald head. No, Smashing Pumpkins. Anybody in the chat, Bullet with Butterfly Wings, Smashing Pumpkins? Anybody remember that song? Just like,
everyone,
I mean, it's like Enter Sandman that just bass just hammers just like Enter Sandman does. Just absolutely amazing. There you go. Thomas Marshall knows exactly where it's at. He always does.
He does always. And also,
I'll check it out tonight, Thomas.
Also, he said that you made up the song. No, I just looked it up. It is actually a thing. Bullet with Butterfly Wings.
By the Smashing Pump, yeah, Smashing. I had their box set back in the day. I think I lost one of the discs. The one with the song that I liked the most was the one that I lost.
Hey, the comment here from a Wet Socks. He says, Kip, you wouldn't like my open baffle system, then we need to add a sub for you. Actually, some of the best sounding audio systems I've heard in my life were infinite baffle or, as you want to call it right there, open baffle systems. The thing about it is you use the right driver and you do an infinite baffle or free air type system, man, they just have extension for days and they're just smooth and they're tight. Of course, I've done a few. One of my favorites I did, and it's a long time ago, was 315s. Did the back seat of I can't remember the car, but it was 315s I worked into there, and I loved the way they sounded. But it took 315s for me.
AJC knows what it's all about. Despite all of my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. You know the song.
Line.
You know the song? Yeah, I know that's the song. Yeah.
Okay, and the name of that song is
Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Is that right, everybody?
Okay,
in the chat?
I've heard the song then, but I didn't know that was the title.
The Smashing Pumpkins were weird, but that's what made them awesome.
I know the song exactly. I'll have to go put it on my Amazon HD list. I'll have to add it.
All right. Well, I think we're running out of.
Almost been at it for 2 hours.
I think we're out. You're hitting my bedtime here.
Kip, thank you so much for the late ad. I shot at Kip a message earlier and tell him I was going to be sporting the new kicker gear that he sent me. And then right after we started the stream, I looked at my phone and saw that he had messaged me and said, "Hey, I can join if you want me to." And well, of course you can join. Come on. And so it's been a blast. This has been a pretty fun show. And so we sure appreciate you popping in, just kind of ad hoc, just jumping in, Kip.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks. I enjoy it. And, it's sincerely not just me. I mean, the shirt and stuff we sent you is not from me. That's from Kicker. And I know both of you guys do channels that aren't necessarily car audio related, but I consider everything that's going on in these communities to be a positive thing for everyone. And so this is just a small way that Kicker is trying to, show our support for everyone. So we appreciate you wearing the shirt and give us a shout out. But all that goes to Steve Irby and the great management team.
No, yeah. And we should also, I don't know that we said this yet, but if you guys have not checked out Kicker Unmasked, you need to. Great.
Who has not checked out Kicker Unmasked? What's wrong with you if you're not watching Kicker Unmasked?
Kicker Unmasked,
watching us and not watching Kicker. Something is wrong with you.
There's a lot of people that watch all of it, but it's amazing to see the growth rate that we have in Kicker Unmasked. I mean, the people who tune in and new subscribers every Tuesday night, it's pretty crazy. And it's just a pretty we have a very loose script that we run. I had someone one night made a comment something about, man, you must be really good at reading off a teleprompter. And I'm just like, there ain't no teleprompter.
As you proved today.
But it was fun. I thank you for having me on. And anytime, I'd love to get both of you either together or separately on a show Unmasked one night. So we need to plan that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Anytime you want to have us, let us know. I'll try to make time for it.
Absolutely. Would love to get you guys on, pick a topic, something that makes sense. Let's do a powwow. We've just got 3 shows left. After this Tuesday show, 3 for the rest of the year, we're going to take the 28th off. That's going to be Christmas holiday. We're going to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And then we'll be back January, forget this, at the 4th, I think is the first Tuesday. I may be wrong on the date, but we're just doing 3 shows in December and then we're out. And we got something special planned for the show we're not doing. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be pretty cool.
Interesting.
The patented Kip wink there. We got something special coming up.
Kip has been trying to keep everyone on the edge of the street, their seat the whole show, hasn't he? He's been like, "Oh, should I talk about that?" No,
you're going to have to tune into Kicker Unmasked to tell you about that.
I'm going to tell you what. It's not that I can't keep a secret. It's the people I tell. They won't keep their mouths shut.
You mean like all the people watching right now?
Exactly.
It's funny because it's true.
Gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. I got some things I need to finish up outside, even though it's dark, but I got a flashlight. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to start a fresh day tomorrow. Thanks for having me on. I had a blast. Look forward to seeing you both sometime soon.
All right, thanks.
All righty. Thank you for popping in, Kip. As we wrap up the show, let me say thank you to Livid Leon for the super chat. We sure appreciate you helping out with our show by participating financially. That money goes to good usage. Probably some more of these. We'll see y'all next time. I'm Justin, the DIY audio guy, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Nick, give us your sign out.
I'm out.
Kip, you want to do a sign out too?
Peace, everyone.
All right. End broadcast. We'll see y'all on the next one.